Right now, more than 2 million acres of Oregon and Washington are on fire. That is not a rounded up guess. That is not a prediction. 2 million acres are actively burning across just 2 states as you are hearing this. If you took all of that burned land and laid it out flat in a perfect square, you could fit the entire city of Los Angeles inside it. Twice, with room left over. The land that is burning right now across the Pacific Northwest is bigger than some entire countries. And 2026 is now officially the worst wildfire year for both Oregon and Washington since the year 2000. We crossed that line this week. 26 years of fire data, and this is the worst we have seen. Not second worst, not close to the worst, the actual worst. And we're not even into August yet. We are still in July as these numbers came out. Fire season usually peaks in August and September, which means we're still in the opening act of what could be a historic disaster. Every terrible fire year in recent memory, 2020, 2024, all of them. And we are already past those numbers with 2 full months of peak fire season still ahead of us. As of July 31st, the United States reached something called National Preparedness Level 5. If you have never heard that term before, let me put it in simple terms. The federal government tracks how bad the fire situation is across the country on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 is calm, 5 is the worst it can get. It means that every firefighting team, every helicopter, every water-dropping air tanker, every hotshot crew, and every available person in the entire national fire system is either on a fire right now or getting ready to deploy. There is almost nothing left in the tank. The reserve is gone. If a major new fire starts tomorrow, there may not be a team available to send. The National Interagency Fire Center, which is the main hub that tracks and coordinates all of this from Boise, Idaho, released its daily situation report at 7:30 in the morning Mountain Time on July 31st. And the numbers in that report tell a story that is hard to ignore. 87 large fires are burning across the country right now. Not small brush fires that get handled in a day. Large fires. The kind that need hundreds or thousands of firefighters and dedicated air support. 7 brand new large fires were reported in just the last 24 hours. And only 3 fires out of 87 got fully contained in that same time period. 3 down, 7 up. The problem is getting worse, not better. The total national count for the year so far is 4.8 million acres burned. To give you a picture of that, the entire state of New Jersey is about 4.7 million acres. So we have burned an area roughly the size of New Jersey this year. And that total is already 133% of the 10-year average for this date. We are running a third above normal. Over 44,000 individual fires have been reported in 2026, which is 128% of the average fire count. More fires, more acres, more damage, more danger. And by the way, these are just the numbers through July 31st. By the time you hear this, they have almost certainly gone up. When federal fire officials looked at these numbers, they said something that stopped me cold. They said fire managers remain focused on readiness for new starts, and that August historically brings continued large fire potential. In other words, the people who fight fires for a living are not talking about how to finish what is already burning. They're getting ready for what is about to start. But the number that really tells you where things stand is the number of people fighting. Right now, 26,675 firefighters and support personnel are working fires across the country. 566 fire crews, 59 engines, 195 helicopters. Those numbers represent a massive deployment of people and equipment. And it is still not enough. Fires are being prioritized. Resources are being split. Some fires are getting less attention than they need because other fires are more immediately dangerous. And here is where the story takes a turn that will keep you watching. Because all of this, all of these fires, all of these firefighters, all of this chaos is about to get hit by a weather event that fire managers have been dreading for days. A massive dry cold front is tracking straight into the northwest this weekend. Wind gusts up to 50 miles per hour. Humidity dropping to as low as 3%. Temperatures staying near or above 100 degrees. That combination is what firefighters call their nightmare scenario. And I'm going to explain exactly what it means, exactly what happened when it arrived, and why it matters for the next several weeks. Before I do, I want you to know why this channel exists. We cover events like this in real time with real data because information saves lives. Not clickbait, not rumors. Actual reports from actual agencies that are managing these emergencies. If you want to stay informed on this wildfire season and other events like it, subscribe and hit the notification bell right now. This is the kind of coverage you will not find in a 30-second news clip. And if things get worse this weekend, which they already have, you are going to want those notifications turned on. Let us keep going. Section 2, a state on fire, and then another one. If you want to understand how bad the fire situation really is, start with Oregon. 30 large fires are burning in that one state right now. Let me say that differently. One state holds more than a third of every large uncontained fire in the entire country. Oregon has become the epicenter of the national fire crisis, and the scenes on the ground are unlike anything most communities have experienced. The governor has invoked the Emergency Conflagration Act 11 times this season. That is the legal tool Oregon uses to declare a fire emergency and mobilize state resources 11 times. That is more than once a week since early July. It is an extraordinary pace that tells you the scale of what Oregon is dealing with. Let us start with the fire that is dominating the news cycle right now. The bench fire near the town of Warm Springs in central Oregon has burned over 67,000 acres. It started on July 23rd, about 4 miles southwest of Warm Springs, and it has been growing ever since. At one point, this fire swelled by nearly 20,000 acres overnight. 20,000 acres in one night. Imagine going to bed knowing there is a fire 4 miles away, and waking up to find it has consumed an area bigger than Manhattan while you slept. The Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs declared a state of emergency. At least 8 homes have been destroyed, along with 5 other buildings. Power lines were damaged by the fire, leaving parts of the reservation without electricity. Pacific Power had to shut down transmission lines as a safety measure. Over 1,000 firefighters are now working this fire, building containment lines, protecting structures, and trying to keep it from moving south toward more populated areas and critical water infrastructure. The fire behavior on the bench fire has been described as active and extreme. That means flames are not just creeping along the ground. They are jumping into the crowns of trees and racing along the treetops. Burning embers are being carried far ahead of the fire line by the wind and starting new fires in areas firefighters have not even reached yet. This is what fire experts call spotting, and it is one of the most dangerous things a wildfire can do, because it means the fire is essentially reaching out and planting itself in new locations faster than crews can respond. Edward Henderson, the Secretary and Treasurer of the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, described the fire as unpredictable. He said the winds would pick up and the fire would literally take a 90-degree turn and change direction. Even experienced firefighters were caught off guard. That kind of behavior makes it nearly impossible to plan a defensive strategy, because the fire can shift at any moment. Oregon's fire department spokesperson was blunt about where things stand. Right now, our resources are extremely overwhelmed, she said. We're doing our best as a state to bring in more and more people every day to help fight these fires and make sure that they are being staffed as appropriately as possible. When the official spokesperson uses the word overwhelmed, that tells you how close to the edge the system really is. But the bench fire is just one of 30. The Grasshopper Fire on Mount Hood National Forest has burned over 21,100 acres with 0% containment. 0. That means not a single foot of fire line has been successfully held. The fire is burning free through timber and grass, and structures and critical roads are in danger. This fire triggered Oregon's 11th emergency declaration of the season and received a federal grant to help fund the response. The Fox Fire in eastern Oregon near Huntington has burned 75,000 acres at about 58% containment. This is the fire that shut down 70 miles of Interstate 84 earlier this week. 70 miles of a major highway closed because fire was burning on both sides of the road. That kind of closure cuts off entire communities from supply lines, medical care, and evacuation routes. The closure has been partially lifted, but the fire still threatens the area. The Hagen Fire east of Pendleton on the Umatilla National Forest sits at 33,500 acres with only 3% containment. Energy infrastructure, including power lines and transmission stations, is under threat. Evacuations are in place. And then there is the Big Grass Fire. This is the monster. Over 303,000 acres have burned along the Oregon and Idaho border near Jordan Valley. 300,000 acres. If you are having trouble picturing that, it is bigger than the entire city of Phoenix, Arizona. This fire started from a lightning strike on July 23rd and exploded through the dry brush and grass of the high desert. It jumped to the Owyhee River, it crossed state lines into Idaho, and it is still burning in every direction. Ranchers in the area have been fighting this fire alongside professional crews because help has been so slow to arrive. Silas Skinner, a 6th-generation Jordan Valley rancher and president of the local Rangeland Fire Protection Association, told reporters the situation is extremely devastating. He talked about the acres of ground lost, the livestock killed or scattered, and the grass space that his family has depended on for generations being reduced to ash. He said they cannot get any air support because Oregon is fighting roughly 3 dozen other fires at the same time. Every helicopter, every air tanker is spoken for somewhere else. These ranchers are not sitting in their houses watching the fire come. They are on the fire line with their own trucks, their own water tanks, and their own equipment, doing what generations of rural Westerners have always done when fire rolls in. They fight it themselves, but this fire is bigger and faster than anything even the old-timers have ever seen. It jumped a major river, it crossed state lines, it is burning in all directions at once. The Idaho governor declared a fire disaster emergency because of this single fire and deployed the National Guard. Level 3 evacuation orders, the highest level, are in effect for Pleasant Valley, South Mountain, Jordan Valley, and multiple other communities. Over 356 homes are threatened, though so far none have been destroyed. The entire area south of Trout Creek Road to the Owyhee River and east to Highway 78 has been closed to the public. Campgrounds are shut down, roads are blocked, and the fire is still only 21% contained with no sign of slowing down. Now let us cross the border into Washington. 11 large fires are burning there, and the situation is getting worse by the day. The Kaiser Canyon Fire is Washington's biggest at over 131,000 acres and about 30% contained. It started from a lightning strike on July 16th near Nespalam on the Colville Reservation. The fire has been burning through tall grass that averages 2.5 feet high, which acts as perfect fuel. The grass catches easily, burns fast, and lets the fire move at frightening speed. More than 1,100 firefighters are assigned to this fire, including international crews from Australia who flew across the Pacific to help. The fire has forced Level 3 Go Now. Evacuations for parts of the reservation, including areas around Ojai Lake, Armstrong Meadows, and parts of Nespalam itself. Operations Chief Keith Kelly told reporters the fire activity picked up quite a bit on one flank, with crews racing to stop it from reaching the Highway 21 corridor. State Route 155 has been closed because fire is burning on both sides of the highway. The total cost of fighting just this one fire has already reached $27 million. One fire, $27 million. The Maudette Fire in northeastern Washington has burned over 21,000 acres with extreme fire behavior. 15 structures have been lost. Evacuations remain in effect. The fire is displaying what experts call crown runs, which means it is racing through treetops faster than people can walk, and group torching, which means clusters of trees are igniting all at once like a chain of firecrackers. The Sinla Haken Fire sits at over 11,000 acres with 0% containment and extreme fire behavior. The Bradeen Hill Fire near Gifford also has zero containment. Washington also has fires burning in North Cascades National Park and near Packwood. Add up Oregon and Washington together, and you get over 40 large uncontained fires between just two states. Nearly 18,000 firefighters and support personnel are deployed across the Northwest region alone. That is more people than the population of many of the towns these fires are threatening. The system is at its limit. And that is when the call for international help went out. The United States has fire-sharing agreements with 5 countries, and this year, 2 of them answered the call. 74 fire management specialists from Australia and New Zealand flew halfway around the world to join the fight. Think about that for a moment. Firefighters from the other side of the planet got on planes and flew more than 7,000 miles because the United States, the country with the largest firefighting force on Earth, needed help it could not provide on its own. They arrived at the National Interagency Fire Center in Boise, got a full day of briefing and orientation, received American equipment, and were sent straight to fire lines across Oregon and Washington. They bring decades of expertise from fighting massive bushfires in the Australian outback, including aviation operations, fire line leadership, safety coordination, and incident command experience. This is the 8th time since 2000 that Australia has sent firefighters to help the United States. But this deployment is especially notable because it includes a 15-person incident management team that is now running the entire response on the Castle Fire in Oregon's Umpqua National Forest. An Australian team managing an American fire on American soil. That is the level of crisis we have reached. The International Liaison Officer for the Australian and New Zealand team put it this way. He said they are here to support the U.S. in a time of crisis, and that when you have got significant fires and you are stretched thin on resources, they are only happy to step up. He said their fire training is very similar and they have had a long arrangement of swapping resources during emergencies. Meanwhile, Australia's large air tanker, which had already been loaned to help fight California fires earlier this month, has dropped over 500,000 liters of fire retardant on American soil this summer. The U.S. military is also stepping in. 4 C-130 cargo planes have been converted into air tankers using special modular firefighting systems. These systems slide into the back of the plane and it can dump 3,000 gallons of fire retardant in a single pass, coating a strip of land a quarter-mile long and 60 feet wide. They can land, refill, and be back in the air in under 20 minutes. 2 of these planes are stationed in Klamath Falls, Oregon, from the Air Force Reserve's 302nd Airlift Wing out of Colorado. 2 more are in California, 1 from the Wyoming Air National Guard and 1 from the California Air National Guard. These are planes that normally carry troops and supplies for military operations. The fact that they are being used to fight wildfires tells you just how stretched our civilian air tanker fleet has become. On top of that, 250 active-duty U.S. Army soldiers are deploying to help fight fires in the Northwest. Not National Guard, active-duty soldiers. When the regular Army is called in to fight fires on American soil, that is not a normal fire season. That is something else entirely. Section 3, the storm that brings no rain. Now we need to talk about the thing that turned this disaster into something even worse. And to understand why, you need to know about one of the most feared weather events in wildfire firefighting. It is called a dry cold front. The name sounds harmless. Cold front. Your brain hears that and thinks cooler weather, maybe some clouds, maybe some rain. In a fire zone, that sounds like exactly what you need. Cool things down, wet things down, give firefighters a break. But a dry cold front is the opposite of relief. It is a cold front that moves through without dropping any rain. The temperature might fall a few degrees, but the wind comes screaming in with nothing to slow it down and nothing to wet the ground. No moisture, no help. Just raw, unrelenting wind blowing across a landscape that is already dry enough to burn at the touch of a spark. If a regular storm is like someone opening a window and spraying water into a burning room, a dry cold front is like someone opening that window without the water. All you did was give the fire more air to breathe. Let me explain why wind is so dangerous for fires. A fire needs 3 things to grow: heat, fuel, and oxygen. Wind delivers oxygen straight into the heart of a fire like a giant bellows. It fans the flames, makes them hotter, and pushes them forward faster. Wind also picks up burning embers and carries them through the air, sometimes for over a mile, dropping them into unburned areas and starting entirely new fires. This is called spotting, and it can turn a contained fire into an uncontrolled disaster in minutes. Firefighters can spend days building a containment line, a cleared strip of land meant to stop the fire from spreading, and one strong gust of wind can carry embers right over it and start a new fire on the other side. Now combine that wind with critically dry air. When the humidity drops below 15 or 20%, vegetation becomes explosive. The moisture inside dead grass, dry brush, and fallen pine needles drops so low that it takes almost nothing to set them off. And in some parts of the fire zone this weekend, the humidity dropped to 3%. 3%. To put that in perspective, the Sahara Desert usually runs around 25% humidity. 3% is about as dry as the instruments can even measure outdoors. You could breathe on a piece of paper and it would feel damp compared to the air at 3% humidity. At that level, fine fuels like grass and dead leaves do not just burn easily, they explode. A single spark from a car exhaust, a piece of metal scraping asphalt, a snapped power line, or a spark from a rock being hit by equipment can go from nothing to a raging fire in seconds. Fire experts use a term called the fine dead fuel moisture content to measure how ready the landscape is to burn. When that number drops below a certain point, fire behavior goes from manageable to extreme with almost no middle ground. This weekend, across much of the inland Northwest, those numbers were at or near their lowest possible values. The ground was primed. The air was primed. Everything was just waiting for a trigger. So take winds gusting at 40 to 50 miles per hour, humidity at 3 to 20%, and temperatures still near or above 95 degrees. That is the recipe for what fire scientists call critical to extreme fire weather. And that is exactly what the National Interagency Fire Center predicted for this weekend. Their exact words were, "Widespread critical to locally extreme conditions can be expected." The weather system hit on Saturday, August 1st. A powerful cold front swept across the inland Northwest with jet stream winds above it roaring at over 120 knots. National Weather Service forecasters said this was not a typical early August front. It was more like something you would see in late August. Unusually strong, unusually organized, unusually dangerous. And then something happened that has never happened before in the state of Washington. The National Weather Service issued a particularly dangerous situation red flag warning for central and eastern Washington. This is the highest possible fire weather alert that exists. It is a step above a regular red flag warning, reserved only for conditions so extreme that any fire, new or existing, could grow explosively and firefighting aircraft might be grounded by the wind. Officials confirmed this was the first time this type of warning had ever been issued in Washington state. The warning covered the Okanogan Valley, the Colville Reservation, the Columbia Basin, the Palouse, and the Spokane area. Wind gusts of 40 to 50 miles per hour with humidity of 15 to 20%. The warning spelled it out clearly. New fires or ongoing fires will be favorable for very rapid fire spread and extreme fire behavior, threatening life and property. And then the fears became reality. Just after noon on Saturday, a wildfire broke out on the west side of Spokane. It was called the Old Trails Fire. It started as brush and grass burning in an open area. Under normal conditions, a fire like that might burn a handful of acres before crews put it out. But Saturday was not normal. The wind grabbed the fire and drove it northeast at a speed that stunned even experienced firefighters. Within hours, it had crossed into residential neighborhoods in northwest and northeast Spokane. Cars packed the roads as thousands of people tried to flee at once. Orange and red flames were visible from the highway. The fire jumped the Spokane River, a natural barrier that should have slowed it down, and kept burning into neighborhoods on the other side. Walls of flame tore through the Indian Trail neighborhood. Home after home caught fire and exploded. Loud blasts echoed through the smoke as propane tanks, fuel containers, and gas lines ignited. People running from their homes could hear the explosions behind them. By Saturday evening, over 2,300 acres had burned in and around a major American city. About 4,000 structures were threatened. Dozens of homes were confirmed destroyed, though the full count was not yet known because firefighters could not safely get into some areas to see what was left. The smoke was too thick. The heat was too intense. The damage assessment would have to wait until the fire calmed down enough for crews to move in safely. Governor Ferguson declared a state of emergency and activated the National Guard. He imposed a statewide ban on all outdoor and agricultural burning that would last through September 30th. State Patrol authorized fire mobilization within roughly 90 minutes of the fire starting, sending 5 strike teams to help local crews. But even with all of that, the fire moved faster than the response could keep up. One woman carried her dog out of a burning house on West Euclid Road. The dog had burned paws. She said she had several other pets still missing inside. A photographer for the local paper captured the scene. She was covered in soot, holding the dog against her chest, surrounded by the ruins of what had been her home just hours earlier. A National Guard general who was helping coordinate the response said something that captured the moment perfectly. He said, "When the sun rises in the morning, we are going to be in shock at what we see." He said he had watched videos of homes burning and called it an extremely difficult situation. "You have got fires burning in towns," he said. "You have got level 3 evacuations like I have not seen before." And Spokane was not even the only fire in the area. 2 other fires erupted in and around the city during the same wind event. One burned nearly 1,000 acres in the Peony Prairie area, northeast of the city. Meanwhile, every major fire already burning in the region was being hammered by the same winds. The Kaiser Canyon Fire, the Bench Fire, the Sinlaw-Hawken Fire. All of them were being pushed in new directions, jumping containment lines and growing in ways that forced new evacuations. And here is the cruelest twist of all. That same weather system did bring rain, but only to western Washington. The low-pressure center driving the cold front pushed moist marine air into the Puget Sound region around Seattle. So on Saturday, Seattle got clouds and sprinkles and cooler temperatures. Meanwhile, 300 miles to the east, Spokane was watching its neighborhoods burn. Same storm system, same day. 2 completely different realities. The rain falling on Seattle provided zero benefit to the fires raging east of the Cascade Mountains. The air over eastern Washington stayed critically dry. Section 4. A fire season built by winter. So how does something like this happen? How do 2 entire states end up burning at a rate not seen in a generation? The answer does not start with summer. It starts with winter. Or rather with the winter that never really showed up. The winter of 2025 to 2026 was the warmest on record across large sections of the western United States. 8 states recorded their warmest winter ever, not top 5, not near the record. The actual warmest winter since records began. And then in March, a prolonged heat wave brought temperatures that felt like the middle of summer to regions that should have been blanketed in snow. By April 1st, when mountain snowpack is normally at its annual peak, the western United States had hit a record it never wanted to set. The amount of water stored in mountain snow is the lowest ever recorded since monitoring began in 1981. Not low, not below average. The lowest in over 4 decades of measurement. The snow water levels were 65% below normal across the entire western mountain system. In Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, and New Mexico, snowpack was 32 to 53% below the previous record low. That is not just breaking a record. That is smashing it. The old worst case was already bad. This year obliterated it by a margin that stunned even the scientists who study this for a living. One researcher at the Western Regional Climate Center described the situation in Colorado and Utah as the worst ever seen in some cases, going back 50 to 75 years. Mountain snowpack is like nature's savings account for water. In a normal year, snow piles up in the mountains over the winter, sometimes 20 or 30 feet deep in the highest areas. Then, as spring and summer arrive, that snow melts slowly, like a tap that runs for months. The meltwater flows into rivers and streams, soaks into the ground, and keeps everything downstream alive and moist. It keeps forests green. It keeps grass supple. It keeps the soil wet enough that a stray spark fizzles out instead of catching. But when the snow is gone too early, that tap shuts off, and everything downstream starts to dry out. The soil loses its moisture. The grass turns brown and crispy. Dead branches and pine needles on the forest floor go from damp to dry to dangerously flammable. By the time summer heat arrives in full, the entire landscape has become a carpet of fuel, just waiting for something to light it. One lightning strike, one dragging trailer chain, one carelessly tossed cigarette. That is all it takes. Washington's snowpack was completely melted by June 26th, 3 full weeks ahead of the normal timeline. Oregon was even worse. 91% of snowpack monitoring stations across the state reported a snow drought. On the east side of the Cascades, where most of the fires are burning right now, the deficit was the most severe in the state. And then spring arrived dry. Well, not just a little dry. March, April, and May brought below normal rainfall across most of the Pacific Northwest. The atmosphere was actively pulling moisture out of the ground and out of the vegetation faster than normal. Dead branches, old needles, fallen leaves, all of it dried out to levels that fire scientists had rarely seen this early in the year. By June, the stage was set. The landscape was ready to burn. All it needed was a match. The matches came in mid-July. Wave after wave of thunderstorms rolled across the Pacific Northwest. But these were not the kind of storms that bring sustained soaking rain. These were the kind that bring what firefighters call dry lightning. The clouds rumble, the sky flashes, bolts of electricity slam into the ground, but barely any rain falls, or the rain evaporates before it even reaches the surface because the air is so hot and dry. Thousands of lightning strikes hit ground that had been drying out for months. Each one was like dropping a lit match onto a pile of kindling, and many of them caught. Round after round of new wildfires ignited across central and eastern Oregon, eastern Washington, and into Idaho. The fires took hold in the dry shrub steppe, the grasslands, and the juniper country that stretches across the interior of the Pacific Northwest. Places that had been baking for weeks under extreme heat with no moisture reserve at all. By the time fire crews realized the scale of what was happening, dozens of fires were burning simultaneously. This is the nightmare that fire managers dread most. Not one big fire. Many fires, all at once, all competing for the same limited pool of crews, planes, and equipment. Resources that might normally be focused on a single large fire had to be split across 10, 20, 30 different incidents. Every crew sent to one fire, there was a crew that could not go to another, and the fires just kept coming. Day after day, lightning strike after lightning strike, new smoke columns appearing on the horizon faster than anyone could respond to them. This pattern is not random. Scientists who study wildfire and climate have been tracking a clear trend for years. The western United States is experiencing longer fire seasons driven by warmer temperatures, earlier snowmelt, and more frequent drought. The window during which fires can burn is getting wider every decade. Fire seasons that used to run from July through September are now stretching from May into November, and the fires themselves are getting bigger, faster, and harder to fight. Washington's fire season this year started on May 7th with a human-caused fire in the Okanagan-Wenatchee National Forest. That is nearly 2 months before the traditional start of peak fire season. The state legislature saw this coming and doubled its firefighting budget to $120 million for 2026, and even that is proving to not be enough. Over 60% of the lower 48 states are currently in some level of drought. And drought does not just dry out the land, it weakens plants. It invites insect infestations that kill trees. Dead trees become fuel. Fuel feeds fire. It is a cycle that builds on itself year after year, and 2026 is showing us what happens when that cycle reaches a peak. Utah's assistant state climatologist called 2026 the perfect storm of conditions. He said everything converged at once: the drought, the record heat, the missing snow, the dried out vegetation, the lightning. It all came together in a way that created exactly the kind of fire year that scientists have been warning about. The numbers confirm it. So far in 2026, over 44,000 wildfires have been reported across the country, burning 4.8 million acres. That is 133% of the 10-year acreage average and 128% of the fire count average. And the 2 months that historically bring the most fire activity, August and September, have barely started. Section 5. What happens next? If you are in the fire zones of Oregon, Washington, Idaho, or Montana, the time to prepare is now. Not when you see smoke, not when you hear sirens, now. Fire officials across the region are asking people to do several specific things. First, register for your county's emergency alert system tonight. In Okanagan County, Wasco County, Harney County, Malheur County, Owyhee County, and dozens of others, these systems are the fastest way to learn if fire is moving toward your area. You can also download the Watch Duty app, which shows real-time evacuation zones on a map, so you can see exactly where the danger is. Second, know your evacuation level. The system uses 3 levels. Level 1 means be aware and ready. Think about what you would grab, where you would go, how you would get out. Level 2 means be set to leave. Have your bags packed, your car ready, your family gathered. Level 2 means you could need to go at any moment. Level 3 means leave now, not in 5 minutes. Not after you check on the neighbors, now. In a fast-moving wind-driven fire like what hit Spokane, the difference between leaving at the first sign of trouble and waiting even 10 extra minutes can be the difference between safety and being trapped. Third, keep your car's gas tank full at all times, every night, top it off. If a fire triggers a mass evacuation, gas stations along the escape routes may be shut down or completely overwhelmed by the number of people trying to fill up at once. A full tank gives you the range to get far away from the danger zone without having to stop. Fourth, prepare a go bag and keep it by the front door. Inside, put your essential medications, copies of your most important documents like your ID and insurance papers, enough water for 3 days, a phone charger, a flashlight, and any irreplaceable personal items that matter most to you. The goal is to be able to grab it and walk out the door in under 5 minutes. Fifth, and this one is critical, do not start any new fires. This sounds so obvious it barely seems worth saying. But the data shows that a shockingly large percentage of wildfires every year are caused by people, not arsonists. Regular people making regular mistakes, campfires that were not fully put out, trailer chains dragging on hot pavement and throwing sparks, exhaust systems on off-road vehicles igniting dry grass beneath them, cigarettes thrown from car windows landing in brush that is dry enough to catch from a stray look, equipment hitting rocks in the field and sending tiny sparks into vegetation that is waiting to burn. Fire officials are begging the public to check fire restrictions before any outdoor activity. No campfires unless they are specifically permitted in your area. No burning of yard waste, no fireworks, no shooting in dry areas where a ricochet could spark a fire, no driving through tall, dry grass with a vehicle that has a hot exhaust system. Every single human-caused fire that starts right now pulls firefighters and equipment away from the massive fires that are already burning. It diverts helicopters. It uses up retardant. It costs time, money, and lives. It is not just careless. At this point, it is genuinely dangerous for entire communities. Despite all of this, there are reasons to feel something other than despair. The response to this crisis has been extraordinary. More than 26,000 firefighters and support personnel are deployed across the country. 74 specialists from Australia and New Zealand crossed the Pacific Ocean to help because their countries have agreements with the United States to share firefighting resources in times of crisis. A 15-person Australian incident management team is running operations on a major fire in Oregon. Military cargo planes have been converted into air tankers. 250 active duty soldiers are deploying to the northwest. The governor of Washington activated the National Guard. The governor of Idaho declared a disaster emergency and sent guard troops to fight the big grass fire. These firefighters are doing something most of us will never fully understand. They are sleeping in fire camps for weeks at a time, breathing smoke-filled air that turns the sky orange, building fire lines by hand in brutal heat, flying helicopters into smoke so thick they can barely see, and putting their lives at risk every single day. The 18,000 people assigned to fires in the Northwest alone deserve more attention than they are getting. They deserve our support, our gratitude, and our respect. This fire season is also a story about communities refusing to give up. The Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs declared an emergency and mobilized their own fire management teams alongside federal crews. Their tribal fire crews were among the first on the scene when the bench fire started, building fire line before outside. Help even arrived. Ranchers in the Jordan Valley along the Oregon-Idaho border are fighting the big grass fire with their own trucks, their own water, and their own bare hands because professional crews are stretched too thin to reach them. A woman in Spokane carried her injured dog out of a burning house and stood in the road, surrounded by everything she had lost, while photographers captured the scene. Neighborhoods that watched homes burn on a Saturday afternoon are already organizing relief efforts, collecting supplies, and opening their doors to displaced families. This is what happens when fire hits home. It stops being a news story. It stops being a number on a report. It becomes personal. It becomes the smell of smoke in your kid's bedroom. It becomes the question of whether the family down the street got out in time. It becomes a gas tank that needs to be full and a bag that needs to be by the door. The extended forecast does not offer a quick fix. No significant rain is expected across the fire zones in the coming week. The only possible moisture comes from isolated mountain thunderstorms, and those are actually dangerous because they can bring dry lightning that starts new fires without dropping enough rain to help. Fire managers have confirmed that above normal wildfire risk will persist across the Pacific Northwest through early fall. This is not a crisis that ends in a few days. This could last well into September or even October. That is the full picture right now. National Preparedness Level 5, 87 large fires across the country, 4.8 million acres burned and climbing. Oregon and Washington in the worst fire year in over a quarter century. A historic first ever, particularly dangerous situation warning for Washington state. Fires burning inside a major American city, international reinforcements from the other side of the world, military planes dropping retardant, and a forecast that offers no meaningful relief. If this video helped you understand the scale of what is happening, hit like. If you want to stay updated as this fire season develops, subscribe and turn on notifications. I will be posting updates as conditions change. And I want to hear from you. If you are in Oregon, Washington, Idaho, or Montana right now, what are conditions like where you are? Can you see smoke? Are you under an evacuation order? What does the air look like outside your window? Drop it in the comments. Your firsthand reports help other people understand what is really happening on the ground. If you know someone in Oregon, Washington, Idaho, or Montana, send them this video. Getting the right information to people who need it is one of the most powerful things you can do right now. And if you have not already, check out some of the other wildfire coverage on this channel. I have been tracking this season since the beginning, and there is a lot of context that will help you understand where things go from here. Stay safe out there. Take care of each other. I will see you in the next one.